Great. Well, thanks for bearing with us during that fun fantasy football chat. We are actually here today to talk about generative AI, and this is actually content that Salesforce has pushed out to all of the community groups to share, kind of going into Dreamforce, just to get like key messaging across. Really, it's fairly markety, but also just like get your gears turning for what you should be thinking about when it comes to generative AI. That's kind of hard to say, and like what you should be preparing for, I guess, essentially. And then of course after Dreamforce we'll have like 1,000 more announcements about it, and hopefully like a more interesting demo, because the ones they did at Trailblazer DX this year were, I think it was just the one demo that we watched like 7 times. So hopefully we have more information. So obviously everyone in the world's talking about generative AI right now. It's all over the news. It's all over Salesforce. It's probably all over your company. And lots of people just don't really understand it. And so hopefully some of the things in this deck, even if you understand it yourself, will give you some ideas on like how do you talk to your company, people at your company about this, so that when everyone's just like, oh, we need chat GPT embedded in everything, you can be like, whoa, slow your roll. Yeah. So let's just dive in. And like Tracy mentioned before, it'll probably be shorter meeting today. There's about 20 slides I think we're going to go through, and then obviously ask questions and leave comments in chat. It's always more fun when we collaborate and giggle at each other. So
Yeah.
all right, let's do it. Did I change the slide? No.
There you go. Now
I did.
okay, so like Christy said before, this was sent to us by Salesforce to go over with our user groups. So if this session lacks the flavor and color that it usually does, it's because we did not write this. However, if the slides look really professional and nice and neat, you also have us to thank. So, slides are very nice looking. All right, so obviously AI is not a new topic for us Trailblazers. It's been natively built in since 2016. Now, back in 2016, when they first introduced Einstein, they said it was like bringing a data scientist into your org. And what they should have said is a little asterisk there and said, it's like bringing a beginner data scientist into your org. Yes, it harnessed those predictive insights and recommendations and helped orgs with a lot of information work smarter and harder, but it didn't help everybody. Today, fast forward to 2023, and Einstein's now running over 1 trillion predictions a week. So what benefited larger orgs in the very beginning now has this ability to benefit almost all orgs today.
What kind of Einstein stuff do you use already in your org, Tracy?
Yeah, so I mean, within Salesforce itself, we've been looking at pipeline inspection and revenue insights. And so we are able to currently, I mean, we're in testing and we're comparing it against our current tools and our current forecasting model to see how well that's doing. I mean, from a user's perspective, it's far more user friendly, but the due diligence that we have to do now to make sure that it's being predictive in the way that we believe our model to work is a time consuming process. I mean, for us, we are looking at renewing our current tool stack and using this next full year to do a comparison before we decide. Yeah.
Interesting. I've done a lot with Einstein Discovery, which of course came out as like one of the first Einstein products, and obviously it does like predictive analysis and has some pretty complex algorithms built in. I feel like that was like step one of all this GPT stuff. So like I feel like people have been using this for a long time, right? It's been almost decades since they introduced that. And so I think it's not as new or as scary as people think it might be, because it's already there. It's just like a different way of doing it.
It's definitely not as scary. It's just you still cannot be flippant about your use of it. Like you can't just flip it on and be like, and this is how we're going to make decisions now.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so yeah, like I said, at Trailblazer DX is when they really announced Einstein GPT, which brings actually to the Salesforce platform, which they've done a lot of demos. I haven't seen it in action in real life in the wild. I would love to hear if someone's got their hands on like a pilot or something and have been able to actually play with it. But I'm excited for maybe after Dreamforce, all this will be GA and we can actually play with it. I'm also hoping that it'll be affordable to use, but I know it's going to be extra license costs. So that's okay. I do think that it'll help improve experience both from a customer perspective and an end user perspective for our employees. And the things that they're kind of pitching for it to do is like helping you write emails, helping you write messages, developing knowledge articles for you, or like drafting knowledge articles for you, or even just finding the right knowledge article for you. I thought it was cool. They showed how generative AI could create a flow for you, you know, based off of your prompts, and also Apex classes and test classes, which I thought was extra cool.
Yeah.
So I know that there's like a million things on their roadmap that they're going to get to, but these are some of the like basic first steps that they're rolling out. And I shouldn't even say basic because those are like big deals, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
I make me a flow that does this, and then you don't have to do it. So
The thing that I want to call out that you touched on briefly is, yeah, when Salesforce rolls out with this new stuff, the price point can be staggering at times. I do my prediction based on not ChatGPT, just on Tracy, is I don't think that the price scare will be as high this time around, because what Salesforce is promising is what every other tool is also promising as well. So Salesforce is being like, hey, here's Einstein GPT. We can help you with your email and your messaging and your articles. Well, you look at other tools, Gong, Sybil, all these other tools are dabbling in it as well and promising the same thing. So for Salesforce to be like, well, we are the only tool in a person's tool stack is a foolish thing. So hopefully they get competitive in that way. Because I know as end users and as a representative for the health of my org, I have no problem being like, okay, well, Salesforce is still our CRM, but I'm going to use Gong's Engage Insights instead of Salesforce.
I'm so impressed with all of the different chat GPT tools that you know.
It has, so in my company, we had an AI roundtable recently. So all department heads took part and brought forth the stuff that they had been researching. So I got a wealth of information, as well as, provided some myself. Just so that,
awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, I just wanted to call out that. And then the other thing that I wanted to call out is, yes, they rolled out, it can build flows, but I saw what it could do, and I had no worry about my job as a declarative admin, because for that to work, you need a person who knows how to build a flow in order to instruct it correctly. Like there's
the right prompt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on. Let's just jump into kind of AI fundamentals here.
Yep. This is still transition.
This is just an agenda slide. Sorry.
Yeah. This is just the agenda. What we're talking about, what generative AI is, and why it's important. That's it.
Do you want me to go to the next slide?
Right. Sorry, I was. I'm sorry. All right. So generative AI, and this is Salesforce's definition, is a powerful technology that is taking the world by storm. This is literally on the screen. However, the definition that is on the screen is way better. It's a family of deep learning algorithms that can automatically create new content, such as text, imagery, code, voice, and even video. Generative AI is also bringing out a whole host of new acronyms that we should just make a dictionary on, so that everybody is aware of it as well, because it's introducing that factor as part of it.
We totally should. So these are, I guess, maybe like the steps we took to getting to generative AI. sure everyone's heard these terms, machine learning and deep learning, but deep learning is actually a type of machine learning, which of course is a type of AI. So all of these things are related. And honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around the differences in like each of these levels of getting to generative AI. But maybe this will help. So machine learning leverages data to generate predictions. So this is like your basic predictive models. And the more data we feed into that machine learning system, the better it can predict, which makes sense, right? Then we have our next step here is deep learning, and that's a type of machine learning that uses more complex algorithms, also known as neural networks, which hopefully someday I'll be able to wrap my head around all that goes in there. And this helps it learn and perform tasks without explicitly programmed step-by-step instructions. So this can learn how to do things by itself with us. Hey, you need to do step 1, step 2, step 3. So that's cool. And then generative AI fits in here under like that deeper learning, but takes it another step um, to like help you do stuff in your life, right? And I think we'll do that on the next slide here.
One of the, before I hit on this slide, with the, if you want to go back one, I thought a great example that I think we saw at Trailhead DX, or maybe I saw it in one of Salesforce's webinars, where it talked about the concept of, I want, AI to tell me when is the best time to go grocery shopping, right? And that's really your first level, where when is, you ask Alexa, I have to say her name quietly so I don't trigger her. When you ask what times should I go to the store, she's just really looking at the traffic patterns and being like, oh, you should go at 12:07. Versus machine learning is the start of creating those neural networks where you're saying, well, I want you to consider the weather. I want you to consider the speed I drive. I want you to consider what I'm shopping for. I want you to consider who I'm taking with me. And then
consider that it's Thanksgiving weekend and I forgot to buy biscuits.
Or yeah, exactly. And so that's where machine learning starts to web out and say like, okay, well, if the weather's raining, that means it's going to take you longer. So even if you're going at an earlier time, you may still arrive at the wrong time. Deep learning is essentially the extension of that, and the web's continuing. Like, okay, well, if it's raining and during a holiday weekend and I'm bringing both my twins, what do I need to factor in that scenario? And so that's where deep learning takes it a step more, and you'll see that expansive web of decisions. And then generative AI is really the output of that decision. It's just saying like, we've thought like a human, we've thought like a human who likes to overthink situations, and we've come to the best conclusion based on all of the data points that we've gone through.
That's a really good example. I like that.
Yeah. So what is generative AI? So traditional deep learning methods use smaller neural networks to solve AI problems, such as making predictions or recognizing patterns. Generative AI is built upon, and here's one of those acronyms, LLMs, large language model, not to be accidentally dyslexically switched and heard MLMs, it's LLMs. This is not Herbalife, this is something different.
Oh my gosh.
Which that large language model, that LLM, is essentially that neural network that I described, that visual. So this includes billions upon billions of parameters with all these connected through tiny decision-making elements that increase the LLM's capabilities and also show how much better it is than those traditional methods of AI previously. And then, Salesforce wants us to do a shout out to ChatGPT. With popular products like ChatGPT, many of the roots and the interactions of the generative and conversational AI have been hallmarks of our digital lives for quite some times. Lord, hallmarks, a word I never say. For instance, consider how a search engine knows how to complete searches for you. That's a great example of generative AI. For those of us with less traditional Google searches, it's even more impressive.
Less traditional Google's. Can you give us an example, Tracy?
I think.
Never mind. I don't want to know.
I don't want to tell you about the fine. Go.
Don't want to know. Yeah. So why is generative AI having its inflection point now? Because it's been coming for a long time, right? So there's these three contributing factors here. One, there's more data. There's a huge amount of data that we have available today. Use it. Two, we have better algorithms, and better deep learning algorithms have been developed that discover patterns within these large amounts of data that we have now. And then just compute power. We have tons and tons of power and amazing systems and servers and computers that are capable of doing all this data now and calculating it and computing it and doing whatever they're doing to it. And it makes this possible. Could we have done this even if we had the idea, 20 years ago when Terminator came out? No, we didn't have the power or the technology to do it. And so we're just like at the right time in our lives where all of these things are now becoming possible. And it's just crazy to think like 20 years from now, what is the next thing going to be? Like,
Oh my gosh.
not so. Although we did say in the 90s that we were going to have flying cars in the 2000s, and we totally didn't. So
We were off by one thing. Like, big deal.
Okay, so we talked about kind of what generative AI is. Now let's talk about why it's important, and then we'll get into like what are we actually going to do with it.
Okay.
Tracy.
Yes, got you. Sorry, the slide transitions are messing me up. So generative AI is, after all, creating opportunities for all businesses. In an IT survey, 67% of IT leaders noted they were prioritizing generative AI in the next 6 months. And I can say this for my org as well. Businesses are excited about the huge potential that generative AI offers. So this is an even more important reason that we as Trailblazers need to understand this underlying technology and how it might transform the way businesses operate. It's, not to be fear-mongering, but the more that we understand AI, the more that we can unlock it for our company, and also the more that we can establish that we are necessary harnessers of its power. Businesses are excited about its potential to drive efficiency and productivity. Employees are worried for their careers. I'm kind of ad-libbing here, but I'm going to just hit on it. But it's true. A business can be excited. We can be excited as individual users of it, but as employees, there's some worry there. But I think that there's no need to worry as long as you stay up to date and realize how it can be used to the benefit of your individual jobs. Interacting with generative AI for the first time can be a mind-blowing experience. It can help you generate from, I can't read that, Christy, I cannot.
You want me to read it for you?
Never. Do not submit our users to that. Bottom line is, it's not something to be feared. It's something to, at an individual stakeholder level, invest in for the future of your career and the future of the progress that you'll make for your company.
Hold on, I would like to read the line that you didn't want to say. They're suggesting that you can generate a poem written in the style of a pirate, which I think would be really useful on Talk Like a Pirate Day. So I don't know why you didn't want to say it.
I have my
Okay. I think I like what you were calling out about just people being worried. This is what the third time now we're really talking about AI in one of our user group meetings. And yeah. I think the first time we talked about it, which was right after Trailblazer DX, a lot of people were saying that they were worried, like they're generally concerned for their jobs. I think especially more on the developer side, just because of the demos they showed of just code and test classes and just being generated for you, and it looked really good. It was clean. It followed best practices. So I do think that there's a worry, but like you said a few slides back, it really takes someone who knows what they're talking about, who knows deeper elements and features of the platform to create the prompts that create those really clean things. You can't just say, write me an Apex class that creates an opportunity. Like it would have no substance in it. So yeah, anyways, there's worries, but I think we can get around them. so 4 principles to use generative AI responsibly, and I'm really happy that Salesforce and every company really is really starting with like, what is our process going to be? What are going to be our core principles for rolling out AI? Because without those, I think it would just be chaos and a disaster, and nothing would ever be right. So of course, trust is number one. um, I think that it's really important that when we are using generative AI, like say in an Einstein bot or something, we're making it clear that the content a customer is interacting with is a bot. It is generative AI, so that we're not trying to, pull one over on them. And if you're talking to a person, but you're not, someone's going to be like, yeah, you guys are dumb, right? Security, of course, protecting personal identifying information, proprietary company information. I think this is going to be a huge one for everybody. I know at Slalom, we've had, very early on, lots of procedures and processes and rules about, hey, you can play with it, but don't put any of your customers' data into a model. Don't put any of our internal company data into a model, because all that becomes private or public at some point, right? It's all used to train the next model, and then it's going to, suggest to someone that they do something that I built, or, whatever. So just making sure that you're really protecting your information, your customers' information. And then accuracy. Always review and revise generated content to ensure accuracy. It could write you maybe the perfect pirate poem or whatever, but you might need to put your own personal spin on it. You might need to correct some data. I mentor a group of veterans who's using Salesforce, and I noticed that they were leaning really heavily on ChatGPT for like certain scenarios in a project they were doing, and I had to keep reminding them, ChatGPT, the model stopped being trained in what, 2021 or something, and so it doesn't have any newer data in it. Like there are
Yeah.
November 2021. There's been so many like new flow features and functionality that have come out that it would never ever suggest to you. So just making sure that, if you are prompting it something, review what it gave you, especially if you're writing an email to a customer or something. Just review it, make edits. It doesn't have to be gospel. And then empowerment. Use generative AI, use it as an assistant to supercharge your capabilities, to supercharge your company's capabilities. Um, yeah, I think it's going to be great once we figure out what we're going to do with it.
One thing that I want to touch on just with the security point is there is essentially a new role for us now of areas that we have to be careful, because everybody, is competing to have generative AI. And that is coming at, and then we've hit this in the other user groups, is coming at an ethical cost in some cases. I don't know if last week you saw, but Zoom kind of secretly, very secretly, changed their TNCs. And that caused a big problem, because essentially what Zoom said, they added a paragraph in their TNC saying, hey, anything that you record, we are going to use for our LLM.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So there's stuff like that that's coming out, like there's potential for companies to behave in less than ethical ways in order to compete in this generative AI race. So just from a personal standpoint, I'm reviewing all of my company's contract and fine lining all of the TNCs, because I don't think Zoom's the first, and I don't think Zoom will be the last in trying to take a shortcut and trying to build their generative AI model. Another area where I've seen it is with Chrome extensions. So be careful with the Chrome extensions that you get that are ChatGPT or anything AI related, because they will have a lot of times in their documentation of what you agree to, your user terms and conditions, is, hey, that Excel spreadsheet that you are using that Chrome extension for, that's going into their LLM as well. So we're in a great time, but we're also in a great time for companies to take advantage and potentially steal.
Be shady.
Yes. So there's that part. These are just two examples that I've personally.
I didn't think about Chrome extensions, but yeah, I guess we really have to
Yeah.
Look at the fine print on everything.
Look at the fine print, even though it's boring. Look at the fine print because they're hoping you don't read it. This slide is actually my favorite slide. It's a great definition slide, and I think that we should share this one specifically, maybe as part of our definition workbook that we'll make. But these are, with new technology comes great risks. And so here are some of the keywords and things to watch out for and what they mean. So hallucinations, not just something you'd see on a house rerun. So generative AI is a form of prediction that sometimes gets those predictions very, very, very humorously wrong. So incorrect responses are also known as hallucinations. With any AI-generated text, it's important to review that content and ensure that it's accurate and correct. So now we get to say hallucinations in everyday tech talk, which is awesome. Data security is protecting personally identifying information and proprietary information. When using these AI services, it's crucial. So if you are thinking of wanting to see a predictive model based on your closed opportunities for the past fiscal year, don't be putting in opportunity names, be using IDs. Do what you can to scrub your data to protect it. Plagiarism. One of the things that I think I run into a lot when I'm playing with things like ChatGPT is plagiarism. So marketing trailblazers have to be cautious in this area. LLMs and AI models for image generation are typically trained based on that publicly available data. There is a possibility that the model will learn a style and replicate that style, an Andy Warhol style, Jackson Pollock is any toddler, so maybe that's not a great example, but that is a possibility.
I saw an article about this the other day. It was written by an artist, of course. He's like worried about his livelihood, but he had encountered a bunch of artwork in his style that had been generated by AI. And those are things that people are never going to buy from him because he didn't do it, but now they don't have to. And so he was like kind of desperate, like, how do I solve this? And I don't think there's any way around that, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah. User spoofing. This is probably, I think, the scariest one just on a personal level. So it's easier than ever to create a believable online profile complete with that AI generated picture. Fake users can use this to interact with real users or fake users, and it seems like you're just talking to a person. This makes it very hard for businesses to identify bot networks and filter them out. But from a personal standpoint, user spoofing, I mean, we've seen examples of it on the news already where user spoofing is imitating your loved ones in text messages, imitating your loved ones' voices on voicemails, stuff like that. So a little trick that I learned is, at least from a personal level, and I don't mean to go dark here, but I'm just trying to offer things. From a personal level, it may be good to have a code word that you use with your loved ones, because we're in 2023. No one is calling me unless it's an emergency, right? No one. So if I get a phone call from a loved one, that would be the first question that I ask to ensure that this is not some bot, that I'm not dealing with some kind of spoof. And same in text messages. Just a trick that I saw, something to consider, but it is real and more believable than ever. There were examples that I saw online where I'm like, that would have gotten me for sure. So there's that part of it. Sustainability, the last one. The computing power required to train AI models is insane. And the processors doing the math require a lot of actual power to run. As the models get bigger, so do their carbon footprints. Fortunately, once the model is trained, it takes relatively little power to process that request. And renewable energy is expanding, but it's still something that is a downstream effect. Like we are increasing our carbon footprint as we're on this escalation path.
I love that they added that one because that's not something that I necessarily think of immediately when I think about AI is, oh, how much power does it take to power that model? So I love that.
Yep.
One thing that I think that is missing from this list that I think is a common concern or should be a common concern is just data quality. Like if you're training your models with shitty data, then you're going to get shitty predictions and shitty generated content. So I think that it's just like something that people can start doing now, is cleaning up their data before they even start thinking about applying any sort of generative AI to it.
Agreed.
I will call out to you this trail mix that they have linked here. I highly recommend. It's I don't remember how many modules it is, like 5 or 6 maybe, but it does kind of do a deeper dive into each of these sections, and I found it actually really helpful, and you can like actually talk about this stuff. So highly recommend. Okay, so now let's get into just what does the future look like here. So what you can do now is, of course, one, stay up to date on news and announcements, which are kind of overwhelming at this point. They're happening every day, every hour by every company, right? So I think in terms of the Salesforce ones, I would look at the actual Salesforce ones, things coming directly from Salesforce. There are a lot of partners that are generating things around AI. Of course, Slalom is one of them. Guilty as charged. But I think looking at the true Salesforce announcements with how Salesforce is implementing this stuff on the platform without any third party tools will be important. I think it's important to keep in mind, if you start using one of these other third party things and just plug it in, how will that scale with what Salesforce does end up rolling out in the future? So just keeping those kinds of things in mind, and why it's important to actually see what Salesforce is doing. Mm-hmm. Step 2, learn about the fundamentals, do that trail mix. I think it'll be really good for everybody to do. And I think there's a couple different ones. There was like an admin version and a developer version and maybe like an everybody version that you can do. And I think probably all of them have mostly the same information in them, but it's all beneficial. And then step 3, get ready to unlock the future of AI. Just like be ready and get excited about it. I'm excited about it. I mean, we goof around and are sarcastic AF, but I'm excited about generative AI and what it'll do for the platform and for customer experience and for our end user experience. I think that there's a lot of power and a lot of fruit that will come from this as long as we do it in the right way.
For sure. Understanding, if there were slide transitions, understanding the prompt engineering. So prompt engineering is basically how you're interacting with the AI. So ChatGPT, when you're asking it a question, this is prompt engineering. Same with Google Bard. And so all this slide is saying, once it finally loads, is it loading on your side or is, God bless?
It's loaded for me.
Okay, fine. Then it's just on my side. Just on my side, that's fine. You don't have to use this in your work environments. But I encourage you to use it daily if you can. Now, this offers some fun and silly prompts. I will obviously not read the 4th bullet point. That is, how I already feel. But prompts that I'm thinking of are, if you are in your review cycle with your managers and you have to review yourself, ChatGPT yourself. If you are trying to negotiate salary, ChatGPT that. Ask it questions on how do I bring this up and in a healthy way that gets my point across. Family life, we talk about, recipes, stuff like that. Eugene and I are trying to think of ideas for a date night. I've asked ChatGPT on more than one occasion, and this is the prompts that I give it. Where the how far I want to go within San Diego County, the amount of money I want to spend, the shoes I want to wear, and then I know. Okay. And then I usually end that prompt with, hey, please surface me the answer in bullet points or surface me the answer in a table. And I'll tell it the table to answer it for me. And that's how I've gotten a lot more user-friendly responses and smarter responses. When it comes to work stuff, I thought the second example is something perfect to play with. There are times, and here's a great example. Us as admins, we have 200 licenses in our org and 199 are in use. We know that there's some cleanup necessary. However, we also know that we have a habit of freezing users and then forgetting to deactivate them. There is no report in Salesforce that lets me see those frozen users. It has to be in a SOQL statement. That would be a first great prompt where you would know potentially what the outcome would be, and you can play that out in a scenario that doesn't hurt or harm the environment. It's generic enough that it's not giving personal information, but it's showing you a language that you don't understand well and helping you get an answer that you would have normally struggled to get. It would have been something manual or hacky.
I think on that point, it's just a good way to learn that language too.
Yes,
Like, hey, I need to know this and this and this. How do I say that in SOQL? And boom, this is like the structure of how you would do that. So now you know.
exactly. And so you're adding essentially to your skill list that you can read SOQL proficiently. And then eventually that evolves into I can read and test SOQL, I can read and write SOQL. You're making the tool good for you.
Boom. I do just want to call out before we move on this like statement in blue, always follow your company's security policies when using generative AI tools. And I think this is true when you're using any of them. Like even Canva has a generative AI thing where you can ask it to create documents for you. You know, double check what data they're retaining on their end and what data you're allowed to put in that, just so that you're not breaking any rules or um, promoting things that you shouldn't be promoting. So here are a few tips for how to actually engineer these prompts. So first is provide context, and I know Tracy, you'll have a story about this probably, but you need to ground your prompts in your own knowledge so that it gives you what you want. And the example here that they put is super basic. It's like you're going to prompt it with write an email versus write an onboarding email for a new Salesforce user in a financial services company, which is still even too basic, right? You would need to give it a lot more information with like what sections you want, any rules they need to know, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have a story on that one, Tracy? I feel like
No, I'm reading about hiccups. Christian is my new best friend.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, I was reading through that earlier. Also, I got. Is the
There,
screen
now,
frozen?
now it's there.
Okay, my bad. Number two, be security minded. Again, don't put any confidential company information into these tools. They are public. It is not private. You will get fired or open yourself or your company up to lawsuits, especially, maybe you work for a Salesforce partner. I work with lots of different companies. If I'm putting those companies' information into one of these tools, Slalom will get busted. They'll get busted. I'll get busted. Everybody's going to get busted. It'll be a whole thing. And then, of course, again, just reiterating, review and revise. What it's spitting out does not have to um, be gospel. Edit it, use it as a starting point. What is Keith saying? Mentioned ChatGPT, but I did not hear what this is. Did you already cover that? So ChatGPT is one of the largest tools run by OpenAI, and it's one of these generative AI prompt tools. So if you go to, I think it's just chatgpt.com, or it might be openai.com slash
It's
chatgpt or
OpenAI.
something.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if you go to OpenAI, you enter and then you can essentially start.
Yeah. Definitely start playing with it, Keith. It's really fun to play around with. Just remember these like ground rules to not give them any private information, because everything that people are plugging into it now are being used to train the next version of the model. So just keeping that in mind. I do think that it's important to use one of these tools and practice writing your prompts, because it does take some work to refine what you want. It's like kind of talking to a toddler, or like that exercise we all did in elementary school where you practice giving people instructions by making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something, and like you have to give it every step or it just skips to one and you end up with peanut butter on your face or whatever. So it is important to practice, and I think that'll just give you a leg up for when you're actually doing this in your company. You'll know how to use it already. Okay, and again, just this skills quest, do it. I think it'll be um, good for you guys. Tracy, if you're already typing, will you just put this link in the chat too so they can just click on
Yes.
it? They were doing a competition around this quest before. I'm not sure if that's still active, but of course the trail mix is still there for you to do. So, and that's it. That's our spiel. That took much longer than I thought it was going to take because we added lots of ad lib. But I think this is just an important topic to keep learning about as much as you can, and start playing with it. Start asking your companies, like, do we have a plan for this? Let's get the conversation started. Even if we don't have any intention of implementing something, in the next 6 months, 12 months, you still need to start talking about it. How is generative AI going to impact us, from other companies that we work with or people who interact with our software, or, stuff like that. So always good to start the conversation. And if you're the one bringing it up, that's like gold stars for you too. Anything else, Tracy?
No, I think just call out next month. And that's it.
Yeah. Next month we're going to Dreamforce, of course. And so the meeting that we have after Dreamforce, we'll do a recap of our experiences, and hopefully we'll see some of you there as well. And we'll talk about big announcements. And
they gave Ruth fingers. Ah!
What?
Ruth has fingers.
Oh, I see. That's really creepy. Thought you had like a brain freeze or something. I didn't know what was going on. Anyways, we'll see you guys next month, same time, same place. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys. She has fingers.